Hi, Viv, this is Nano. Since Aga and I sang to you the song of Peter Cottontail, I thought I'd read you the story of Peter Rabbit, where Peter Cottontail character came from. This is the story of Peter Rabbit, and this is called The Tale of Peter Rabbit by Beatrix Potter. And she was a British or English writer. Okay? Here we go. Once upon a time, there were 4 little rabbits, and their names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. They lived with their mother in a sandbank under the root of a very big fir tree. Here we go. Here they are. Now, my dears, said old Mrs. Rabbit one morning, you may go into the fields or down the lane, but don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden. Your father had an accident there. He was put in a pie by Mrs. McGregor. Now run along and don't get into mischief. I'm going out. Okay, there's Mrs. Rabbit. And she took a basket and her umbrella and went through the woods to the baker's. She bought a loaf of brown bread and 5 currant buns or raisin buns. Because she lives in England, you always take an umbrella with you when you go out in England because you never know when it's going to rain. Believe me. Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail, hence Cottontail, who were good little bunnies, went down to the lane to gather blackberries. But Peter, who was very naughty, ran straight away to Mr. McGregor's garden and squeezed under the gate. Oh, look at him squeezing under the gate. First he ate some lettuce, and then some French green beans, and then he ate some radishes. And then, feeling rather sick, he went to look for some parsley. Just like you, he can eat parsley right out of the garden, just like you do. But round the end of a cucumber frame, whom should he meet? Oh boy, there he is, but Mr. McGregor. Mr. McGregor was on there he is. He was on his hands and knees planting young cabbages, but he jumped up and ran after Peter, waving a rake and calling out, "Stop, thief!" Peter was most dreadfully frightened. He rushed all over the garden, for he had forgotten his way back to the gate. Oh no, oh no. There he goes. He lost one of his shoes among the cabbages. Look at that. And then the other shoe among the potatoes. After losing them, he got on all 4 legs, and he actually went faster, so that he might have gotten away altogether if he had not unfortunately ran into a gooseberry net and got caught by the large button on his jacket. It was a blue jacket with brass buttons, quite new. You're going to see this. Look at that. There's the button, got caught in the shrubbery. Peter gave himself up for lost and shed very big tears, but his sobs were overheard by some friendly sparrows, who flew to him in great excitement and implored him, "Exert yourself," which means get up off your butt and get moving. Well, Mr. McGregor started coming up with a sieve, which he intended to pop on top of Peter. Ho-ho, but Peter wriggled out just in time. And, leaving his jacket behind, he rushed into the tool shed and jumped into a can. Look at that. He jumped right into the can. Uh-oh. Well, it would have been a beautiful thing to hide in, but it was filled with water. Uh-oh. Peter's in the can of water. Uh-oh. Okay, well, there he is in the bucket. Mr. McGregor was quite sure that Peter was somewhere in the tool shed, perhaps hidden underneath a flower pot. He began to turn them over carefully, looking under each one. Look at him looking. Oh, dear. Ha-ha. Well, presently, Peter sneezed. Kershoo! Mr. McGregor was after him in no time and tried to put his foot upon Peter, who jumped out a window. Look at Peter jumping out that window, upsetting 3 plants. The window was too small and for Mr. McGregor, and he was tired of running after Peter, so he went back to work. All right, what happens next? Uh-oh, okay, well, Peter sat down to rest. Whew, he was out of breath. trembling with fright, and he had not the least idea which way to go. Also, he was very damp with sitting in that can of water. After a time, he began to wander about, going lippity-lippity, not very fast, and looking all around. He found a door in a wall, but it was locked, and there was no room for a fat little rabbit to squeeze under. Now an old mouse was running in and out over the stone step, carrying peas and beans to her family in the wood. Peter asked her the way to the gate, but she had such a large pea in her mouth she could not answer. She only shook her head at him. Peter began to cry. Oh, poor Peter. Then he tried to find his way straight across the garden, but he became more and more puzzled. Presently he came to a pond where Mr. McGregor had used to fill his watering cans. Look what he sees. Ooh, a very white cat was staring at some goldfish. See the pretty white cat? She sat very still, but now and then the tip of her tail twitched as if it was alive. Peter thought it best to go away without speaking to her. He had heard about cats from his cousin, little Benjamin Buddy. All right, now what? He went back towards the tool shed. But suddenly, quite close to him, he heard the noise of a hoe. Scritch, scritch, scratch, scratch, scritch. Peter scuttled underneath the bushes. He's hiding. See, he's hiding under the bushes because there's Mr. McGregor. Uh-oh. But presently, nothing happened. He came out and climbed upon a wheelbarrow, peeped over. The first thing he saw was Mr. McGregor hoeing onions. His back was turned towards Peter, and beyond him was the gate. Oh, there's the gate. Peter sees the gate. Woohoo! Oh, Peter got down very quickly off the wheelbarrow and started running as fast as he could go all along the straight walk behind the currant bushes. Mr. McGregor caught sight of him at the corner, but Peter did not care. He slipped underneath the gate and was safe at last in the woods outside the garden. Whew, he made it. Well, Mr. McGregor hung up the little jacket and the shoes for a scarecrow to frighten the blackbirds. So there's Peter's jacket and Peter's shoes. Peter never stopped running or looking behind him until he got to the big home, his home in the big fir tree. Oh, he was so tired and flopped down upon the nice soft sand of the floor of the rabbit hole and shut his eyes. Excuse me, his mother was busy cooking. She wondered what he had done with his clothes. It was the second little jacket and pair of shoes that Peter had lost in a fortnight, which in English speak is 2 weeks. I'm sorry to say that Peter was not very well. During the evening, his mother put him to bed, made him some chamomile tea, and she gave a dose of it to Peter, 1 tablespoon to be taken at bedtime. So there's his mommy taking care of him. He caught a cold from being in that bucket of water. But Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail had bread and milk for blackberries for supper, because they were good little bunnies, and poor Peter went to bed with just chamomile tea. The end.